Hi, welcome back. I wanted to take a couple of minutes to review some autorefractor strips with you. This is a before and after cycloplegia with twins, 6.5-year-old sisters. Let's go through this very quickly here. So the first instance, we're going to call her L, and both of these girls are coming in. This is their first exams, L and K. Once again, they're 6.5 years old, grade 1. And so we run refraction as part of our general exam. We check health, but refraction is going to be central to what we're doing. Eye alignment, movement of the eyes. Are these children physically able to go through the learning process in a public school? Okay, do they have the basic mechanics? And so refraction, the prescription for glasses, we'll call it, this is critical. The closer we are to 0 in these numbers, the better. 0 means we're emmetropic, we've got neutral sight, we see clearly to the distance without focusing at all. Basically, both eyes, we can count the stars in the sky, no problem with 0 effort, okay? And so we'll go through this and you'll see that we have to investigate sometimes a little deeper to find out exactly what's going on. We can use, in terms of investigating this, what we're showing here is the result of autorefraction or using a machine to get our result. We can also use retinoscopy, and I'll show you a picture of retinoscopy here. Certainly this is part of the general assessment. We use also a technique called cycloplegia, so we put drops in the eyes. For myself, typically I'll go for tropicamide or Madrayacil 1%, and then I'll check eyesight somewhere around 25 minutes, half an hour after that drop goes in the eye. And so this is what we've got here for these twins. They both come in, they're troubled with their vision, and I'll show you kind of what's going on here overall, and the difference that it makes when we just do what's called a dry refraction or wet refraction, otherwise known as cycloplegia. So let's have a look at these numbers here. So L comes in and her dry autorefraction is as shown here. And so we have a strip number, there's a date field, but that's of no consequence here. And so what we have is the right eye depicted and the left eye. Plus numbers indicate farsightedness, and over here under C and A, we have astigmatism power and the angle of the astigmatism. Astigmatism, if you like, if you have a nice smooth lens and if you fold it, it has a crease and you can move that crease out along a certain angle. Astigmatism distorts the things that we see and it stretches out our field of focus, so it makes it difficult to focus on objects. The higher the astigmatism, the worse the problem, but we'll get into that a little bit here now. And so L is showing up and she's got a little bit of farsightedness indicated, and then a good amount, more than her fair share of astigmatism. For reference, anything over 0.75 diopters will be a problem, okay? And so she's got definitely a lot of astigmatism. Mostly the readings are in line, but there's a lot of variance here. And then likewise in the left eye, we have some farsightedness. On its own, not too much of a burden, but we also have up to 4.5, up to 5 diopters of astigmatism. Notably, when we look at this number, SE, this is referred to as the spherical equivalent. This would indicate that there's not much of a problem. L is a little bit nearsighted, not a big deal. When we look at the details of the prescription, we know that L is certainly having a lot of trouble. For your reference, spherical equivalent is when we take the number in the sphere column here and add it to half of the cylinder value, and it gives us this estimate of an overall prescription, if you like. It's not of much use clinically. It's frequently used in science and research, but again, I think it's of questionable value. And so we have these two readings. Following this, we also have our keratometry, or the curvature of the cornea. And in this case, we see that there's 8.5 diopters of corneal curvature alone, and then 4.5 in the other eye. And so cylinder astigmatism comes from both the corneal shape, the corneal curvature, and what's going on with the lens behind it. These two elements combined will give us the total astigmatism value. And so after cycloplegia, after we put drops in L's eyes, we notice that there's a pretty significant release of farsightedness here. We go from a 75 or a 50 all the way up to a 275. If the number goes up, it indicates that the focusing system is relaxing, okay? And so in this case, we see that In her natural state, she's suppressing a lot of this farsightedness, and in the cycloplegic or relaxed state, it goes all the way up to a plus 275. We also notably get much more consistent readings with the astigmatism values. You'll see that the axis, or the ridge, the folding in that astigmatism is much more consistent in its readings compared to the first one. And then the number, the actual quantity, is more consistent as well. Same thing goes for the left eye, post or after cycloplegia. So we've gone up to a 275 again with a straight 450 astigmatism in that eye. Now the question is how do we use this for prescribing? It's another data point. You would never prescribe these values as they're indicated here, but it gives you an idea of the extent of the problem. Let's have a look now at K. K is a bit of a different case. K shows up with a dry refraction of a -1/4, -1/4, and this would indicate the minimum amount of myopia or nearsightedness. Down here, if we look into the keratometry values, you'll notice that we have very minimal corneal astigmatism. So after cycloplegia, we end up with a slightly elevated or a slightly higher plus value, which we expect. It's a little less than I would expect. I would want to see more of a release here and a little bit of an astigmatism reading. It's minimal. Again, anything 0.75 and above becomes significant for academics, for learning. And then in the left eye, similarly, we go from a minus position to a low plus position. So this is kind of what I would expect, but at the same time, it indicates that there's not a lot of release from the pre-cycloplegic to the post-cycloplegic. I would want to perhaps look at some accommodative exercises there to build that range. And so down below again, we have minimal corneal astigmatism at 75 and 1. And so what's the point here? The point is, number one, cycloplegic refraction can be very important in assessing what's going on for any child, even if there doesn't seem to be a great prescription at hand. But typically, for myself, other doctors will vary, but I will use cycloplegia when there's any indication of visual acuity decline or absence. So I would want the acuity to be at a certain level, and if we're not there, and if I can't explain it by the numbers that I see, then certainly I'll ask for cycloplegia. I'll ask for cycloplegia if the numbers are, like in this case, especially for L, if they're askew, if there's something obviously funny about what's going on. I'll ask for cycloplegia if there's any hint of a medical concern. Sometimes if there's a medical concern, I'll check cycloplegic refraction as well, just because I have the opportunity to grab it. In this case, cycloplegia is important for L in particular because it gives us a better idea of what we should be shooting for in terms of an optimal refraction. Once again, we don't use these numbers for our refraction, but they should guide us. And it gives an idea of the extent of what we should be looking for. So before I let you go, I'm going to just throw in 2 more points here. First of all, there's therapeutic reasons to do a cycloplegic refraction. First of all, the cycloplegia alone opens up the pupil and it gives us a chance to have a much better look inside the eye. If the child is not seeing well, we should not ignore possible health causes. And so cycloplegic gives us a chance to have a better look inside the eye. Next, in terms of therapy, when you're walking around with uncorrected hyperopia or astigmatism frequently, this engenders some eye strain, ongoing asthenopia, and this can influence oculomotor activity or accuracy. And so just relaxing that system relaxes the focusing muscles, it relaxes vergence as well, and then we can from there reset. And so it's like carrying a huge weight on your shoulders and suddenly having it taken off your shoulders. And this alone has value to the extent that frequently I will advise people after cycloplegia, consider a nap. It'll likely be one of the best sleeps you ever have, given that that accommodative and vergence strain is finally released. Okay, and having said that, thanks for taking the time to watch this video, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.